Welcome to part 3 of my 7-part series, where I am playing through the Halo games for the first time ever and ranking them in my order of preference. For anyone thinking that 7 is an odd number, that's because it literally is, and because I am only playing the games that are available to play on PC. And for some reason, Halo 5 was never released on that platform, so there you go, my hands are tied. I guess I'll just read through the Wikipedia summary for that game before I play Infinite. I'm also playing these games in release order, which means that having played Combat Evolved in Halo 2, with the current ranking looking like this, it's time to tackle the final part of the original Halo trilogy, Halo 3. A game many people told me I would really like after hearing me bitch about Halo 2 being too corridory compared to Combat Evolved. Halo 3 was originally released for the Xbox 360 back in 2007, which funnily enough is the same year that God of War 2 came out, which is what my last video was about, and it's in that video where I gush about how good of a year 2007 was for games, so go and check that out if you want to understand why that was arguably the greatest year ever for gaming. Interestingly, and something I only learned while putting this video together, is that Halo 3 was not available on PC until it was added to the Windows version of the Master Chief Collection in 2020, 13 years after it originally came out. This is the first game in the series that I am playing that doesn't have a more up-to-date version available at the press of a button, which I'll admit was a bit of a tricky habit to break whenever I was looking at particularly pretty skyboxes, which does happen quite a few times throughout my surprisingly brief time with this game. However, it is still a part of the Master Chief Collection, which I'm learning comes with its own set of drawbacks, but I'll get into those as we encounter them throughout the game. I did do a bit of a read up on the development of this game after I'd completed it, and I was surprised to see that once again, development on this game was generally a pretty stressful situation. Halo 2 had nearly broken the team, and it seems like it took a considerable amount of effort and arguments to bring enough of them together to get this one out the door. The general consensus amongst Bungie was that they were not happy with Halo 2 and wanted to bring this one much more in line with Combat Evolved to get back to what Halo really was. The problem was that by this point, what Halo was very different for different people. As such, if you haven't seen my first 2 videos on the series and gotten an idea of what it is I've been enjoying about them so far, then I recommend you go watch them just so you can understand what page I'm on when playing through this game. Which brings me to reminding you all of 2 important things. 1, I will be talking about the narrative of this game and by extension the previous 2 in some detail, so please consider this a spoiler warning, although you've probably already played these games more than I have. 2, I will not be talking about the multiplayer at all, either co-op or competitive. I know it shaped your childhood, but I don't care. I know that a significant reason of why these games were so popular is because of that multiplayer aspect, and I know that the series changed the foundational way in which multiplayer games work across the industry, but I don't care about that. So yeah, spoilers ahead, I'm just talking about the single player campaign, and this is my first time playing Halo 3. I also played this game on normal difficulty, which I'm sure is already enraging certain sweaty types of people. My understanding is that the higher difficulty modes, particularly in this game, do include some gameplay changes, mainly in AI behaviour and number of enemies. When I first completed this game, I was tempted to play through it again on a higher difficulty setting just to see what was different, but there was one part of this game in particular that put me off that idea completely, and I guess you'll just have to keep watching to find out which part that was. But before we get into any of that, I just want to take a moment to thank the sponsors of this video, the prophets of the High Council that are my Patreon members. Yes, I've moved from YouTube memberships over to Patreon because YouTube was more than happy to take your money but didn't quite like to show you the content you are paying for, so I've moved over to a more reasonable platform. Patreon page is an ongoing development as we explore different potential rewards, but at the moment, Patrons also get access to exclusive benefits like ad-free videos and early access, so go check that out if that sort of thing tickles your fancy. Tiers start from as little as £1 or whatever your local equivalent is, and donations go directly into keeping this one-man operation chugging along. So grateful am I for your support that I've started learning other languages in order to properly express my gratitude. Khana mazida hai, shukriya. So yeah, please do go and check that out if you'd like to support the channel. The link is in the description, and I believe we had a fight that needed finishing. After what would have been a 3-year wait to see just how Chief was planning to finish this fight, the game opens with him falling out of the Forerunner ship we left him on, which I honestly can't believe was plan A. I mean, Truth is on that vessel, right? Surely we should be battling our way through the ship to try and kill him. But nope, we needed to jump out of the ship while it's still moving and land in the jungle somewhere? Okay, cool. Now, before you finish that comment you're typing, I know there was a comic that covers the time between the games. It shows that Chief did try to kill Truth, but ended up being thrown out of the ship or something like that. Now, I know there were development issues with both of these games, and we all know that they didn't want Halo 2 to finish on that cliffhanger, but I really don't think that a comic was the way to go with this. Like I said in the Halo 2 video, it's the publishers and executives who are to blame for shit like this, for not giving the development team enough time to actually finish their games, and what we're left with is whatever they can pull together in the last few months of 100-hour work weeks. Imagine if Halo 2 ended where the comic leaves us, with Chief being thrown out of the ship. Or if not, imagine if this game started with that encounter. Just a few sections where we battle through the ship, come face to face with a chap that is literally trying to destroy the galaxy, only to get beaten up and thrown out of the window. It could have replaced the jungle sections we start off in and felt like an actual continuation of the last game. But we didn't get that. We get a monologue from Cortana about how Chief is really lucky, which I think also confirms that there are other Spartans, which raises other questions as he crash lands in the middle of a jungle. I feel like the games have been trying to push some sort of connection between Cortana and Master Chief, but I really just don't see it. It kind of reminds me of the Peter Pan and Tinkerbell relationship, where she is quite clearly into him in some way, and he is just completely oblivious to any of it. And I think that's been one of my biggest surprises coming to this series after 24 years of hype. Master Chief is not a good character, in my opinion. I said before that he feels like they couldn't decide whether or not they wanted a silent protagonist, so tried to walk some sort of middle ground, and I really don't understand how Chief's voice actor became so popular despite barely saying anything. That in itself is fine. From what I've seen in these games, I think Chief is supposed to be some sort of cyborg warrior, a weapon to be deployed in times of need, which I can get fully on board with, but I have trouble believing that this expressionless, monotone killing machine is doing any of this for any reason other than it's his job. Anyway, our almost silent hero lands in the jungle and is found by our buddy Sergeant Johnson, who thinks he's dead, only for him to spring back to life and nearly blow the head off the Arbiter. This reaction surprised me, as I'd have thought Chief would have at least given him the time of day before lodging a pistol in his lower jaw. I mean, the last time they saw each other, a giant plant zombie had teleported him somewhere in an attempt to open his eyes to the reality of the Covenant's prophecies. But instead of discussing about how that went, he goes straight for the juggler and is only stopped by Johnson's command. Like a well-trained dog, which is all he really is now that I think about it, just with guns and a regenerating shield. We move through the jungle and get into some fights with some fairly familiar Covenant forces like the Grunts and the Jackals, and the better looking Brutes, which don't look like a hastily shaved gorilla anymore. I want to thank everyone who commented about this in the Halo 2 video, but thanks to them I now know that the last game was basically designed for a better graphics engine, but this game still looks really good to my mind, especially considering its age. For that reason, I think I understand at least partially why they didn't set the start of the game on the Forerunner ship. Firstly, that'd be exactly the same as the last two games, and secondly, this was the first Halo game to come out on the Xbox 360, so they really wanted to grab your attention with the new graphics they were able to pump out, and a jungle is just a much better demonstration of graphical fidelity than a series of steel corridors. During our little escapade through the jungle, we come across a new weapon or two and an improved version of a classic firearm, which I'll get into properly later on when I talk about the combat as a whole, but for now I was just enjoying the play of the game. The familiar combat style was back, meaning that if nothing else I was going to enjoy the core gameplay, and in this section at least there was a good dollop of cinematic set pieces going on around us and rapidly shifting objectives. First, we were just trying to get to an evac point, but then we have to split up, and then Johnson gets captured, and that's a whole thing where we have to assault an enemy position. It certainly kept me engaged, even if I did occasionally forget our specific objective throughout this game because it keeps changing so rapidly. I had to watch the footage back, for example, to see when it was that Johnson and his lads went their own way. One thing I got tired of pretty quickly in Halo 2 were the wave defense sections, and this part where we have to rescue Johnson and wait for our evac had me worried that this was starting again. Thankfully, this proved to not be the case, as we only really had one big but gradual wave to deal with, and it had the added challenge of a phantom hovering overhead peppering us with laser fire, making the whole encounter feel more like an action film set piece and less like waiting for a taxi on a Friday night in Manchester. Our Pelican turns up and blows the Phantoms to hell and then takes us underground to be reunited with Miranda Keyes, who seems to be leading the ground forces against this invasion. In any type of media where we spend our time almost exclusively with the legendary heroes of the land, I always enjoy getting a glimpse into what life is like for the regular folk, or in this case the regular human soldiers who aren't mechanically enhanced super soldiers. They're not in great shape, and it turns out that Master Chief is the only one who can save them now, which does bring back a question I had in the last game. Where are the other Spartans? Maybe this gets covered in another game or a book or something, but if Master Chief is Spartan 117, then that would suggest that there are 116 other Spartan super soldiers out there, right? I mean, I guess like the Arbiter, there could be only one Spartan at a time and he's the 117th, but then why was there a spare cryo chamber next to Chief at the start of the first game? Quick disclaimer, these questions are just my thoughts while playing the game being spoken out loud. I'd rather not get any spoilers for the future games, if you'd be so kind. That said, if these questions are answered in a book or a comic or a poorly received TV show, then by all means spoil away. We do get a bit of exposition here about what's going on with the whole invasion thing. The Prophet Truth has parked his ship at what turns out to be a Forerunner artifact and has begun to dig it up. We know from the last game that he's trying to get to the Ark where he can trigger the halos and effectively destroy the galaxy, and he set up a perimeter of anti-air defenses around the dig site so that he can do his digging in peace. Our FaceTime with Lord Hood is interrupted by Truth, who basically just tells us we're all gonna die horribly, and Miranda calls to evacuate the facility before it gets attacked. I did chuckle at this little line here.
Ma'am, squad leaders are requesting a rally point. Where should they go?
To war.
Like, that's very badass and cool and all that, but tactically, that's pretty useless information. Just give them coordinates or something instead of showing off in front of all your mates. With the base facing imminent attack, we need to defend it and get the wounded out. I was once again worried that I was staring down the barrel of several wave defense sections, but instead we get several assault scenarios in different parts of the base. Is this just a wave defense section but stretched out with bits of walking in between? Arguably yes, but it doesn't feel tedious or repetitive like those Halo 2 wave defense sections did. This was the first time I got my hands on the new energy hammer, which to me felt like it handled identically to the energy blade from the last game, but it has a better sound effect on impact, and it's a giant hammer, so it's objectively more badass. It's during these combat encounters that I started noticing new details about the brutes I was fighting, in that they come with a range of different levels of armor, and the big samurai looking ones, while being the rarest, would always be carrying one of these death hammers. It was a bit weird to notice that once you shoot a brute's armor enough, it will just disappear off their body, and I'm kind of confused as to why they thought this was a necessary detail to include. The brutes do still occasionally go into berserk mode when you damage them enough, but I didn't find this to be as big of a deal as it was in the last game. They drop fairly easily in this mode, as they would have been weakened anyway in order for this state to trigger, and I didn't find them to be as bullet or laser spongy as they were in Halo 2, which I did appreciate as I did not enjoy fighting these guys in the last game, whereas here that was not the case. We also get our first glimpse of the buggers in this game, which they're now calling drones, which is a much more sensible name, frankly. From memory, I don't think these chaps appeared as often in Halo 3 as they did in 2, but when they do show up, they bring all their friends and their mums, feeling like a proper swarm of buggy bastards. I mean, they're still easy enough to deal with, but I felt like every time they turned up in this game, there was enough of them to give me a little bit of that oh shit feeling, which is what an invading alien force should be making me feel. It's also during this section that I got completely blinded a couple of times and saw enemies popping up golden domes of protection that I couldn't shoot through. I never did quite figure out how to spot the flashbang things going off before blinding me, and I eventually learned that while those domes do protect anyone inside, they also inadvertently protect anyone outside from the people within. I don't know whether I missed a tutorial, or maybe this was something that's explained in the manual that 2007 me would have been reading on the train ride home from the shop, but I had no idea that I was walking around with a deployable shield for a good long while. I'll talk more about these later, but these tools or equipment items or whatever they're called were a bit lost on me, and I imagine these are things you really need to get a good understanding of if you want to make it through the harder difficulty settings. But as for my casual ass, I was happy leaping around and ripping off gun turrets to get up close and personal with some ugly bastards. I did quite enjoy the first time I ripped a turret off its mount and started strutting around with it. It gives a bit more freedom in what would otherwise be a static section of shooting enemies as they appear in front of you, like some sort of extraterrestrial whack-a-mole, but being able to patrol the battlefield with one opens you up a bit in terms of options. I was begging for a sprint button while carrying a turret though, however I did figure out that you move more quickly when walking diagonally. I mean, it works for crabs, so it must be good enough for armored dudes with gun turrets, right? While you were helping clear the way for the evacuation, the rest of the Super Best Friends Club were prepping a bomb to leave as a surprise for the Covenant. Unfortunately, you hear over the radio that Johnson wasn't able to hold the control room against the brutes, so they've fallen back, leaving the bomb to be deactivated. Because Master Chief is apparently the only person capable of getting anything done, we head back into the base to switch the bomb back on and then get the hell out of there. I quite like this bit, as most of the Covenant forces are just ignoring you and trying to get the hell out of there, but still a few dickheads hanging around looking for the glory of killing the demon. I feel like this section could have done with a timer counting down or something though, just to ramp up the tension a little bit, as I found myself unclear as to whether the bomb was on a timer, or if a trigger had been activated, or what was happening. As we descend a lift to get to the lower levels, we seemingly get our answer, as the base above us erupts in flames, leaving us trapped underground with several other Marines and a garage full of warthogs. Unable to communicate with any other forces, we just want to get these chaps as far away from the base as possible and try to link up with some friendlies. Maybe this would have been easier if Miranda had given an actual rally point earlier, but hey, that kind of thinking is above my pay grade. This is where the game opens up in terms of play spaces, as we get a fairly decent sized section of relatively open areas with lots of vehicles to play around in. While I still kinda hate how the warthogs steer, there is still a childlike joy to drifting around enemy emplacements and letting the guy in the back open up with his minigun. It's also still funny when you accidentally roll the thing over and then flip it back like it's an inflatable toy in the wind. I also had to go with the new Covenant dirt bike things, looking like something out of a Mad Max concept art book or that cancelled Full Throttle sequel. Unfortunately for me, I found that these controlled just like the Warthog, so while I still managed to get through these areas just fine, I did find myself pining for a ghost to steal. Now I understand that this was likely limited by the technology of the time, but I would have loved a few more Marines to be joining me in the first part of this section. I quickly lost the other one or maybe two warthogs, and the chaps riding with me got themselves killed somehow. Honest, I have no idea what happened to them. Eventually I hit a barricaded tunnel full of drones, but by the time I cleared it out and dropped the shield, all my other guys were dead, which was weird because someone was talking to me over the radio reminding me to drop the shield. On the other side of this, we regain communication with our real friends who tell us to head to the nearby town, as they're pretty sure Truth has uncovered the Ark. This little area was the first where I had to stop and just have a look at my surroundings for a moment. One thing these games have been consistent with is their skyboxes, and those distant vistas are always worth stopping and having a look at, which did get me into some trouble later on in the game. In the distance, we can see Truth's Forerunner ship parked up in the centre of a huge crater being excavated by other Covenant vessels. There's also this vista nearby that shows a series of destroyed rings littering the desert. I have no idea what those are supposed to be, so if someone who has read every book and comic could let me know, I'd really appreciate it, because it's a cool visual, I just have no idea what I'm looking at here. We continue along the road and encounter a few combat scenarios with other groups of Marines. helping them fend off Covenant reinforcements and waiting for new warthogs to turn up. I really enjoyed this section in particular, and it reminded me of that warthog bit in the first game where you have to find all the crash sites, which was when I really started to warm up to that game. Unfortunately, all of my new friends were dead by the time I got to the end of this section, where I encountered a barrier being protected by somewhere around 1,000 brutes if my memory serves me. I managed to take them all out using a combination of hiding and letting my shield recharge before proceeding through to what proved to be one of my favourite levels in the game. As far as the human forces know, Truth has uncovered the Ark, the thing he needs to trigger all of the halos to fire and wipe out all life in the galaxy. We need to stop him, but he has erected a ring of anti-air emplacements around the crater, and we need to punch a hole in that ring to allow our men through, which reminds me of this one time with your mum, but I haven't got time to tell that story. This section is a mixture of indoor and outdoor combat arenas, where we have to keep opening doors to let the Marines through and out into the open spaces that contain the anti-air guns. We have a shit ton of Marines with us that I think keep spawning in to maintain their numbers, which is the only rational explanation because there's no way I was good enough to keep this many chaps alive. I really like these indoor areas because they feel like they were built more like multiplayer maps than actual security installations. Yes, they're enclosed and a little bit claustrophobic sometimes, but I felt like there were several routes to get around, so you could always find a way to flank enemies or get the drop on them from a different position. And moving forward, I realised that several other enclosed areas throughout the game were built like this. We then open out into this sort of loading area, I guess, which is full of Covenant arseholes shooting our boys out of the sky. I didn't realise it at first, but this area gives you plenty of options with how to tackle this scenario. I had already got my hands on a ghost, so I went in guns blazing and got taken out fairly quickly, but someone with more skill than I could have focused on taking out the enemy vehicles with that, or there are other vehicles around here like quad bikes that other dudes can jump on the back of. These chaps on this platform have rocket turrets which can take out the enemy tanks, or you can find a sniper rifle and take out the pilots from a distance, as long as you keep an eye on the other tank over there that will blow you up if you hang around too long. One thing you shouldn't do is try to mount an enemy tank to throw grenades into it before killing the guy manning the machine gun, because as I learned, it turns out that Master Chief's armor melts pretty quickly when under sustained point-blank gunfire. We move through another indoor combat arena before exiting into another docking area filled with Covenant arseholes for another fight. I decided to give this chap with a rocket launcher a lift, and I quite enjoyed dodging all the chaos while he let rip with that thing right next to my fucking ear. Unfortunately, the fun ended when he tried the old Quake rocket jump technique and knocked us off our quad bike. This area was beautifully chaotic, with so many Marines and Covenant forces duking it out in all manner of ways, barely giving me the chance to appreciate it all due to trying not to die. This sort of thing is what the last game missed, to my mind, and feels like an evolution of what the first game gave us a glimpse of. Darting between explosions, quickly trying to find another vehicle, fighting off air support. This was more exhilarating than anything I could remember from either Combat Evolved or Halo 2. As we clear the final enemies, we get reports of something big heading our way, the seriousness of which is emphasised by the chapter transition animation playing. One of my favourite moments of playing Halo 2 for the first time was realising that I could jump on the back of the Scarab as it was passing beneath that bridge. Yes, that's what Bungie intended for us to do in that scenario, but it felt like I had made that decision myself, taken a risk and had it pay off, resulting in an "oh shit, that worked" moment. However, this moment involving a Scarab moving past us resulted in more of a "oh shit, we're fucked" moment, which is a weird thing to look back on fondly now that I think about it. In my God of War 2 video, I mentioned a boss that seemed like it had taken inspiration from Shadow of the Colossus, which had been released the previous year, and I had similar thoughts about this Scarab battle, although the inspiration wasn't immediately obvious to me, and I guess this encounter kinda highlights the pros and cons of providing the player with so many tools and options in these huge combat arenas. Now, I don't want to show off, but I know how to kill a Scarab. We did it in Halo 2. Get inside and shoot the power core. But this thing is towering above us and stomping around, the animation of which kind of reminded me of those videos of cats wearing boots, which did lessen the perceived threat a little bit. The rocket turret I was currently sat behind kept targeting the knees, so I opened fire like my life depended on it, but due to the feline-esque movements of the Scarab's limbs, none of my shots were landing. I went in for a closer look and spotted glowing spots on the knee joints, which we all know typically suggests a weak point that needs to be attacked, but my guns were having no effect. So I took to higher ground to try and leap on the back of the beast, but no, it keeps moving around too much, but also stopping too far away from any piles of dirt for me to reach it. I eventually spot the crane arms high up above the battlefield and climb the ladders to try and replicate that bit from Halo 2, only for the thing to sit perfectly still and just fire plasma lumps at me. It did get a bit closer at one point, so I took the risk and leaped towards its head, only to roll off the hitbox and fall to my death. That initial excitement was starting to wear off and frustration was creeping in. After a couple more deaths and trying to leap at it from different angles and unload all of my ammunition into its knees, I stumbled across a ghost and gave that a go. Lo and behold, the ghost's cannons quickly stripped away the armor from the scarab's knee and brought it stumbling down. This is when my brain made the Shadow of the Colossus connection. I'd injured the giant bastard and could now climb up it and bash the glowing thing until it died. There are a few more of these encounters throughout the game, and now that I knew how to bring them down, I enjoyed them a whole lot more. Like I said, this encounter does perfectly display both the highs and lows of the combat encounters for me in this game, which I guess means it's time to properly get into the combat. So let's talk about guns. Roll the montage.
Laser beam.
Yeah.
I like that one.
You like that one?
I don't need to go into the nitty-gritty about Halo combat at this point. It's foundationally the same as the last two games. You can carry two weapons at a time, certain weapons seem to work better against certain enemies, there's a grenade button, all of that good stuff. We don't get any new Covenant enemies in this game, other than the higher ranked brute units, though we do get some different types of Flood, like these tanky bastards and these twats that climb up walls and shoot at you. We do get a few new weapons though, but we also seem to lose a couple from Halo 2, unless I just never found them, like the plasma sniper rifle, which I enjoyed very much in the last game. That said though, we do get some new weapons which I did very much enjoy, like these one-handed shotgun things which seem to tear through enemies like your mom tears through boxes of chocolates, and this huge laser cannon thing which you have to charge up before it fires, but it absolutely obliterates anything stood in front of it, like your mum when someone tries to stop her from eating chocolate. As mentioned, there is another melee weapon here which is functionally the same as the energy sword, though I still think giving these weapons an ammo count is a bit too heavy-handed. I get that they're insanely powerful, and when used properly, they can have you zipping around the battlefield one-shotting dudes left, right and center, but surely them being melee creates enough of a balance there? Or is this one of those things where the weapons were balanced for both multiplayer and single player at once, and those sweaty multiplayer types were just getting too good with this? As previously mentioned, we can also rip gun turrets off their stands and carry them around now, which is very cool, but balanced with a rapidly depleting ammo counter and the fact that you move like someone who's just shit themselves. I enjoy the extra combat options this feature provided, but unfortunately, I have to say that I was incredibly disappointed with the new flamethrower here. Like any reasonable human being, the idea of a flamethrower is enough for me to metaphorically rub my hands together and cackle with glee, and the prospect of using such a device against a shambling zombie-esque horde got me so excited that my desk suddenly became wobbly. However, upon rounding a corner and unleashing a spray of heated hell upon my enemies, I quickly realised that they keep coming when they're on fire, which does damage to me, and that it overheats and shuts down about as quickly as your dad trying to perform a menial maintenance task. This killed that power fantasy almost immediately, and when I found another flamethrower much later on in the game, I all but left it alone, not yet ready to relive that heartache. Flamethrowers should have us feeling like the bringer of death and destruction, not carefully firing off spurts and hoping we don't make too much of a mess. You can make your own mum or dad joke there, my coffee's worn off. There are also those new tools that I mentioned earlier. These can offer a range of one-use abilities, like an energy shield that you can hide behind, or a dome that gunfire can't pass through but people can. You can turn invisible for a bit, boost up into the sky, or drop a flashbang which will blind the fuck out of you for a good long while if you're not careful. I imagine that this mechanic was properly explained in the manual, a tutorial method which is lost in this age of digital downloads, so I can only imagine that this is the reason the game does not tutorialize them at all. It took me a while before I even noticed this weird symbol on my HUD, which I then ignored until I noticed it changed and looked up the key bindings to see if there was anything new. Again, I imagine these are more integral to combat on the higher difficulty settings, as I got through most of the game without really needing them, though I did use them fairly often just to mix up the combat a bit and have a bit of a play about. I did come to rely pretty strongly on them during the Cortana level, a part of the game I have more opinions on, but we'll get to those later. The stealth tool was the most immediately useful over there, but I found that blocking off Flood with deployable shields helped keep me alive long enough to run away from them, so I imagine that players with some actual skill and tactical ability would be able to use these things to change the shape of the battlefield and create choke points, whatever they are. So yeah, a cool feature, but something I found myself barely interacting with. All of these new combat mechanics work to enhance what we already had, which was a solid and exciting combat experience. We get a couple of new vehicles in Halo 3, like the big wheeled bike thing that fires rockets, and the human version of the Banshee called the Hornet. The vehicle sections in this game are much less restrictive than those in Halo 2, and the general level design throughout this game felt to me more like a sequel to Halo 1 than to Halo 2. I loved how some areas would combine the big open sandboxy bits with scripted set pieces, like the open area where you find a load of Marines and help them fight off Covenant reinforcements. Though this does bring me back to what I was saying earlier about that Scarab encounter featuring both the pros and cons of the big combat scenarios in this game. We have to take down this Scarab. We have a big open area full of debris to take cover behind, ramps to jump over like a badass, and terrain to climb and gain vantage points. This area is full of different vehicles to pilot, AI buddies to fight alongside, gun turrets to man or rip off their stands, and all sorts of different weapons lying around. This is all great, and exactly what I was hoping Halo 2 would provide as an evolution of what Combat Evolved provided us with. However, despite all of this freedom, the only method I found to work was to jump in a ghost and shoot at a knee until the Scarab toppled over a little bit. I was given a range of options, but only one of them was the correct one. Other encounters later in the game do give you more actual options for this type of scenario, like stronger weapons or more vehicles, though given that parts of the Scarab can be visually damaged, it is a shame that the one fixed constant is that you have to get inside the thing and shoot its big glowing point until it explodes. I mean, I guess you could use some variety of flying device to get above it and drop down onto its back, but you've still got to get inside it to finish it off, just like your mum. I know this is making me sound like a whining little bitch, something I'm especially aware of because I really enjoyed the vehicle sections here, and these Scarab battles were great. These sections really are brilliant, and the sort of thing I felt was sorely missing from Halo 2. I know we had big vehicle-based areas in the last game, like the tank bit when you're heading to the library, but they felt so limited, like here is your tank, don't lose it. Whereas here, it's much more freeform. Oh, your co-pilot accidentally exploded you off your quad bike? Well, you better get running and try and steal a ghost or something, or hell, jump on the back of this warthog and see where he's going. This is the sort of thing I loved so much in the first game, and it was great to see it back and improved on here. I might as well take a moment here to talk about how good this game still looks. I guess technically it doesn't look as good as the Halo 2 anniversary graphics, for example, but personally I think the Xbox 360 and PS3 era is the point where remasters or remakes wouldn't be needed if they just made modern consoles more backwards compatible. I mean, I'd be lying if I said this looked just as good as Red Dead Redemption 2 or Horizon Zero Dawn, but if you look at this and think it looks shit, then you need to give your head a wobble. Remasters and remakes are just an easier way for the publishers to make money and to make you buy the same thing again. If the consoles were properly backwards compatible, then we wouldn't need remakes. Yes, I have bought 3 different versions of Shadow of the Colossus and 2 versions of GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 1. What's your point? While the game looks and plays great, I did notice that the sound was off again with this one. Not nearly as badly as Halo 2, as I could actually hear the music, but the general sound effects were missing that oomph. I mean, a shotgun should sound better than this, right? From what I can tell, this is a recurring issue with these versions of the games on the Master Chief Collection, so while it didn't bother me too much during my playthrough, every so often I would be reminded of how quiet the guns are in this game and how this really shouldn't be an issue with a nearly 20-year-old game. Come on 343, fix this nonsense and take some pride in the games that gave you a career. I'll go into my thoughts on the actual story itself properly later on, but I did feel like the cutscenes got less attention this time around. There's still enough of them and they tell the story well enough, but they felt lesser somehow than in Halo 2. The annoying thing is that I can't articulate why that is. I don't know why I found the cutscenes in Halo 2 more gripping, but the ones in Halo 3 overall just felt lesser, and I really can't understand why. Maybe it's the reduced focus on backstory and world building, instead concentrating on specifically what actions need to be taken next. Actually, now that I think about it, I think that's what it is. There isn't really a story being told. We already know what the story is. We're stopping the Halos from being activated from the Ark. But during the game, we are focused on how we do that, with very little actual story being told. Now that I've said that, I'm not sure that makes any real sense, but hopefully someone else on the internet has been able to understand and articulate what I'm talking about in the decades since this game was released. With the Scarab finally dead, we turn our attention to a huge anti-air battery outside of the town, and along the way we bump into a couple of hunters for the first time. I really like these guys as enemies, as they add an appropriate amount of dread, but they don't have that marauder effect from Doom Eternal where they have to become your primary focus. They're nice and tanky and can kill you pretty quickly, but they're easy enough to outmaneuver, and I think the series so far has sprinkled these enemy encounters in just the right amount of times. They're not everywhere, but they're common enough that they don't become mini-boss encounters, making them memorable enough without them feeling like a boss is being reused whenever they run out of ideas. We fight our way through Covenant forces and destroy the anti-air battery, which is the point where I was finally 100% confident that, while the sound effects were maybe a bit too quiet, the music was just as loud and clear as it needed to be. This wasn't the first time the music had kicked in to provide an excellent backing track for the action on screen, but it was done so well here, swelling into a heroic anthem as I plodded up the hill mowing down little knobbers with my gun turret. This was where any concerns I had about a repeat of the Halo 2 music fiasco were put to bed. With the AA battery down, the human air forces move in on the Ark, only to discover that what they thought was the Ark was actually a giant device that opens up a huge portal, which the Covenant forces then start pouring into. At that moment, a dusty Covenant ship turns up and crash lands nearby. The Flood are here, with a little bit more bombast than their arrival in Halo 2, but this also still felt a bit like, oh yeah, the Flood, here they are. I really like the way these guys look with the improved graphics, and I actually prefer their appearance here compared to the Halo 2 anniversary models. The Flood are now on Earth, which I guess we all know is a big deal, but I feel like the other characters could have seemed a bit more concerned about this literally apocalyptic development. Miranda tells us to head to the crashed ship to overload its core, which will wipe out the city and any flood within it. This seems like an odd decision to make. We're on Earth, right, where all our stuff is, and you're clearly okay with destroying a city. Wouldn't it be quicker just to launch a nuke at it, rather than send a chap to battle his way through to Ground Zero and detonate an alien ship? Again, above my pay grade, but the Flood are the Flood, and we tackle them in the same way we did in the last two games, except some of them can take more damage now and others can climb up walls and such. It did add some excellent animations where you see the little parasites take over the bodies, and I'll be surprised if you're seeing any of that on screen right now because fuck knows how I'm supposed to find that specific animation, but it's a cool touch all the same when you do manage to see it. Along the way, a squad of elites join us to help to reach the crashed ship. I really quite like this moment, fighting alongside these guys after 2 games of shooting them in the face. We also get some banter from the Gravemind as we push our way through his forces. Oh, and I forgot to mention that the Arbiter has been with us this whole time, for whatever that's worth. Along the way, we find out from the elites that Cortana is on this crashed ship, so it's a good job we didn't nuke the city after all, I guess. We find the ship and rescue her, only to find out that it's actually just a pre-recorded message. Guilty Spark is also here, who says that seeing as the Master Chief destroyed his Halo installation, his only purpose is to help him. Which, okay, he admits that he should have done that all along, but that seems like a lazy writing excuse to get him on side at this point, considering all he's been interested in so far is activating the halos. I really like this quick shot here with the elite ships obliterating the city beneath them to cleanse it of the flood. We then join the super best friends on that ship having a meeting about what to do next. Guilty Spark prepares the device that Cortana's message is in, where she warns that High Charity has been completely taken over by Flood and is on its way to Earth, but that the Gravemind has no idea about the portal, the other side of which is a way to stop the Flood. Up until this point, the game has occasionally stopped us as Chief got distorted visions of Cortana seemingly speaking to him, and it seems as if they were broken up snippets of this recording. I really like this cutscene, with the humans and elites being forced to work together while both still being sore about all that war they've had between themselves. Also, this elite mentions a Gravemind, suggesting that there's more than one of those giant Audrey 2 things out there, which raises more questions for me about the Flood. I mean, I assumed they were unheard of until the events of combat evolved, but this chap knows enough about them to refer to the Gravemind as a Gravemind. Also, I still don't understand why flood spores were being stored on one of the devices designed specifically to stop their spread, but whatever, maybe I need to read the books, or a Wikipedia article once I've finished the games. Lord Hood is determined to huddle up on Earth and fight the flood-infested High Charity when it turns up, seemingly thinking they might just have a chance if they stand and fight, despite literally floating above the scorched remains of half a continent caused by one little ship of those things crash landing. Man's an idiot and just doesn't want to work with the elites, clearly. We see a brief exchange of equipment between elite and human forces, and everyone flies off into the portal to stop the halos being activated and to find this solution to their flood problem. The super best friends emerge from the portal above a giant installation in deep space and drop down on the surface tracking Truth's ship. This whole next level is probably, on the whole, my favourite of the game, as it's almost like one huge combat arena with a wide array of vehicles, weapons and different types of encounters. I said earlier that first Scarab encounter felt like it only had one proper solution, but this level feels like the sandbox has been burst wide open and we've all been invited to play. I was jumping in tanks, using quad bikes, sniping motherfuckers, blowing up gun towers, made to feel all the more epic with a consistent support of Marines at my side, giving it the intensity of a large-scale battle rather than just me getting shot at from all angles. From what I've seen of the series so far, if someone were to ask me what Halo is like, I'd make them play this level. As we try to catch up with Truth, we discover a map room, which around these parts they call a silent cartographer for some reason. Inside the facility, I also found this one terminal, which I'm going to assume is supposed to contain diary entries from a Forerunner who was stationed here, I assume, thousands and thousands of years ago. It provides a bit of background to the installation we are on and doesn't get brought up by anyone else, thus having no impact on the story. But it's a cool little detail that suggests that these halls have not been walked in countless millennia, and here we are dirting the floors with whopping great big tanks. We also have another Scarab encounter, which is much more enjoyable after knowing how to actually kill the thing. Once we reach the silent cartographer, we find out that this facility is actually the Ark, and it is positioned outside of the Milky Way galaxy. We learn that Truth is in a control area called the Citadel, around which he has erected a protective barrier, which is becoming an annoying habit of his these days. We split into 3 groups to each take out a shield generator, which will allow us all to proceed to Truth. This is another area of the great mix of outdoor combat arenas and more corridor-based shooting. We end up having to disable 2 towers after Johnson goes radio silent, which does bring back some of those repetitive corridor vibes from the first game, as both towers feel like they have an identical layout with an identical combat encounter at the top. Though they are split up with some vehicular combat sections and a bit where we get to fly a Hornet, so it's not all bad. With the shield down, the elite ships close in on Truth, and we see the High Charity warp in above us. I didn't think of this till watching the footage back, but I guess from the character's point of view, that could mean that either the High Charity bypassed Earth completely and came straight here, or it's already taken care of Earth and is moving on to finish off the rest of us. I do like this encounter where the flood crashed through the window on a big chunk of rock, and as we fight them, the music takes on this horrific tone suitable for battling this seemingly unstoppable cosmic horror. We have another big section fighting Covenant and Flood as we approach the Citadel, which kept making me think of the Citadel from Mass Effect, which came out the same year as this, and was an Xbox exclusive at the time, and deals with technology left by an ancient and mysterious alien race, and featured Keith David on voice work. Anyway, the encounter ends with a climactic battle against 2 Scarabs as Chief and Arbiter head inside to stop Truth once and for all. We then see that Truth has Johnson captive, and as we saw in the last game, they seemingly need a human to activate any Forerunner tech. Either that or the Covenant are all germaphobes and don't want to touch any buttons older than they can comprehend. Miranda crashes through the window to save Johnson, who tries to convince her to kill him and herself to stop Truth from being able to activate the halos and wipe out literally everything. She hesitates though and gets shot, and they force Johnson to press the button to activate the halo firing systems. Chief and the Arbiter arrive at the top of the huge lift and are confronted by a couple of huge Flood dudes, as the Gravemind tells them that he will protect them on their way to Truth, as Chief is literally the only person who can stop the activation in time. I really appreciated this bit, fighting alongside the literal enemies of every living thing, but having to work with them to avoid total obliteration. I also liked seeing the Flood take control of the corpses of the fallen Covenant, increasing their numbers as the enemy drops, resulting in a wave of zombie plague monsters by the end of this huge tunnel. The Arbiter kills Truth as he is slowly being infected by the Flood, and to be honest, this felt a little anticlimactic. We've been chasing this guy for the best part of 2 games now, and once he kills him, the Arbiter just kind of shouts a little bit, but it's more the kind of shout you do when you find out you've mounted a new door upside down, rather than just having eliminated the being that has been manipulating your entire race and a galactic empire into bringing about their ultimate destruction. With the Covenant threat finally eliminated, and in a move that absolutely no one could have possibly seen coming, Gravemind turns the Flood against us. Johnson escapes with Miranda's body, but Chief and the Arbiter have to fight their way out through this huge Flood army that they have inadvertently helped create. On their way out, they discover that the Ark had been creating a new Halo installation to replace the one that Chief destroyed. It's nearly finished too, which makes me wonder how long it takes to knock one of these things together, because how long has it been since the end of the first game? Halo 2 and 3 lead directly into each other, and Halo 2 starts amongst the still burning wreckage of that installation. So the Ark has almost completely thrown this thing together in, what, a couple of days, right? Anyway, Chief wants to activate it, which 343 agrees will result in completely eradicating the local infestation, which isn't how I thought it worked.
Halo doesn't kill Flood, it kills their food. The only way to stop the Flood is to starve them to death. And that's exactly what Halo is designed to do, wipe the galaxy clean of all sentient life.
Is it true?
More or less.
But that's not how it works now, so shut up and start thinking about how to turn the damn thing on so we can save the day. 343 says that it will take him a while to create an activation index, but Chief somehow knows that Cortana still has the one from Installation 04. Doesn't seem very safe to me to have one key be able to activate just any galaxy-ending super weapon, but hey, what do I know? What follows next was my absolute least favourite part of the game. The Covenant are gone now, so the only enemies we encounter for the rest of the game are Flood, and personally I think the game suffers for it. Like many people, my least favourite part of Combat Evolved was the library, and my least favourite part of Halo 2 involved running through corridors away from unending waves of Flood. Honestly, I think I liked this level less than either of those examples. The library is just a repetitive slog. It's fine in concept but goes on for way too long. The Flood corridors in Halo 2 are more challenging because of the tighter spaces, but if you keep moving you can get through them pretty easily. The same is true with this level, except it's such a confusing and unclear layout of a level that it's easy to get lost and not know where the hell I'm supposed to be going. You can't stand and fight because you'll get overwhelmed and killed, so you have to keep hopping around and hoping you don't bounce into a dead end. This is where I really started using any and all of those tools just to try and slow down the Flood or provide myself a bit of cover. There are loads of ranged variants, ones with guns and ones that will launch themselves at you from across the room, so I was looking for anything that could at least deflect a couple of shots or block a lunging monstrosity. Luckily, there were a fair few stealth tools to use to get through big chunks of this section, and I get that they were probably going for the effect of running from some sort of unstoppable wave of death, but the confusing layout just made each death feel annoying and unfair. I know, where, someone call the ambulance. We eventually find Cortana, who just needed a bit of a pep talk to be brought back from the brink of, well, not death because she's just a highly advanced version of Clippy, but from whatever negative state she's in. We plug her back into our head and start to make our escape, back through the labyrinth of bullshit we just bunny hopped through. Although not quite, because first we get locked in this huge room where we need to expose and blow up some generators to trigger the High Charity's self-destruct. After which we are prevented from leaving the room for a couple of minutes, which I absolutely fucking hate because you can't just stand and fight because you die very quickly, so I was just hastily looking for anything I could drop down to give myself some cover or just let my shield recharge. Eventually a door blows open and we pile through, where eventually we see the Arbiter has come in to bail us out.
What a guy.
The new Halo is in orbit. Actually, no, I guess it's not orbiting. I suppose it's just in position or something above the center of the Ark, as the elites all get ready to go home, because as far as they're concerned, their job is done. Truth is dead, so the unstoppable Eldritch Plague is someone else's problem, I guess. We land on the Halo as close to the control room as we can, and we move through some snowy footpaths with some rather beautiful skyboxes of the Ark overhead. Despite only playing Combat Evolved for the first time 3 months ago, the sight of a similar approach to the control room gave me a decent wave of nostalgia, similar to returning to Shadow Moses in Metal Gear Solid 4. The approach to the control room in Halo 2 was completely different, but seeing this one look so similar to the first game was a really cool touch that I greatly appreciated, and now we needed to fight our way up to the top all over again. Which proved more tricky than it really should have been, and for this I refuse to blame myself and instead blame the NPC dialogue playing here. We are told to keep moving as we climb the slopes, so I do, just like I did in that last level, except I keep getting my ass firmly handed to me. I'm constantly taking damage and being cut off and getting mauled to death, no matter how much I serpentine or try to bounce over the terrain. I even tried climbing up this big strut, only for an invisible wall to deny me that fun. After many attempts at running up that hill, I eventually realised that if I stuck close to the Arbiter and fought the Flood, less of them would be on us at once, and other NPCs would start joining the fight and helping clear out the enemies. Once I figured this out, it actually became a really cool scene, but if I didn't have Johnson encouraging me to keep running forward, I might have gotten it right the first time. We make it to the control room where 343 says we just need to wait a few days for the Halo to be completed before we activate it, otherwise it would destroy the installation and the Ark beneath it. Johnson tells him bollocks and gets killed for his trouble. I guess you could call this encounter a boss fight, but it's just a case of picking up the big laser cannon and shooting 343 3 times, and he only has one real attack which is very easy to dodge. Boss encounters in first-person shooters are tricky to get right in my opinion, and I honestly can't say whether Ryder preferred Guilty Spark to have been killed in a cutscene or whether this was the right way to go. I mean, it has been 3 games, so it needed to be something epic, to the point where I don't think there is any possible way of killing him off in a satisfactory way. I still had questions for him regarding his little speech in the first game, but I guess that's out the window now. Chief and the Arbiter make their escape through the facility, where the Sentinels are now trying to kill everything around them. We find Johnson's Warthog and race across rapidly collapsing construction platforms towards our frigate to escape the blast radius. It doesn't take a genius to spot the parallels between this and the first game, and I will say that despite falling off a couple of times, I thought this was a much better take on that escape run. It's much more cinematic, and there is less, but not zero, opportunity for the dodgy control scheme and physics engine to throw you off in a random direction after a minor bump. We make the final jump and land on the frigate, where the Arbiter heads up to the cockpit to pilot the thing while Chief tries to close up the hangar. The ship makes a run for the portal as the Halo activates and the Ark explodes, and we cut to a memorial scene set back on Earth, leaving the ultimate fate of both Chief and the Arbiter a mystery. For about 30 seconds at least, until we see the Arbiter. This memorial did make me laugh a little bit though. Like, is this it? This is all the people that died? Well, what about all the people caught in the blast at the start of the last game? What about that half continent we glassed earlier? There's like 15 photos of the Fallen on there. Like, are those the only important people that died in all of this? It's soon revealed that only the front half of the frigate was through the portal when the arc exploded, which caused the portal to shut and for the ship to be cut in half. Chief and Cortana are in the back and are now left drifting in the space beyond the galaxy, and I assume amongst the wreckage of the arc and that halo. Cortana had set up a distress beacon and estimates it will take some years before someone comes to get them, while Chief gets himself tucked into a cryopod to wait it out, ending the trilogy in the same state that we found him at the start of it. I know this scene is supposed to be all emotional and shit, but I repeatedly found myself confused with Chief and Cortana. It's clear that they're supposed to be buddies, and I would imagine people think it's maybe more romantic than that, but I don't see that side of it. Cortana clearly cares about Chief, but while Chief often clearly cares about Cortana, there are other times, like right now, where he acts like she's not there or just doesn't matter. He puts himself into stasis while she explains that she'll spend the next several years waiting to be rescued. He kind of reminds me about how Naked Snake is with Eva in Metal Gear Solid 3, acting like an awkward person who doesn't know how to deal with emotional situations, so just defaults to soldier mode to avoid dealing with it. With the gameplay here clearly acting as a fairly beautiful wrap-up of the trilogy, I did have a few issues with the story told in Halo 3. Gravemind, for one, where the hell was he? He was such a pivotal encounter in the last game, and here he just talks smack to us through other Flood and then gets blown up with everyone else, presumably. Which is another thing. The destruction of the Flood felt incredibly convenient. What, all of the parasites were on that Halo or High Charity? None of them could have gotten out anywhere along the way? I mean, clearly they did because there are several more games to get through now, but at this point there were no other games. This was essentially it. Suddenly this unstoppable force just stopped because it's the end of the trilogy. I do think that having Miranda and Johnson get killed was a good idea from a story perspective. I've since read that one of the writers had seen the film Serenity while making this game and took cues from that film where killing familiar characters increases the tension. If that character can die, then presumably any character can. The issue I had was purely a personal one, and is an issue I found myself coming up against frequently when experiencing older media, be it games, TV programs, or whatever. I had assumed, knowing that there are several Halo games after this one, that Miranda and Johnson would survive. When Miranda first got shot, I figured we'd get a cutscene later on where she's recovering, and it's only after walking away from Johnson that I realised we were leaving him behind to die. I mean, he apparently managed to survive this predicament, so this should be no problem, right? My personal problem is that when I know there are future games or episodes after this one, I assume that everyone will be okay. A few years ago, my wife showed me Supernatural for the first time, and so many season finales end with a cliffhanger as to whether or not they survived, or if the world ended, or whatever. Anyone watching these, or playing Halo 3 for the first time, would be experiencing the last entry in this part of the story as far as they were aware, and so that adds tension. This really could be how they're going to end it. Could they even come back from something like that? But my cynical ass watching or playing it now is just thinking, ugh, this tension is wasted on me because obviously they're going to be okay, there's another 4 or 5 games after this one. Only to then realise that I shouldn't have dismissed that dramatic sequence so easily because that actually was their death scene. My point is that I have trouble relating to tension in older media that has sequels when it comes to the fate of recurring characters, because I have knowledge that no one at that time of release had, so many instances of tension are largely absent. But then I guess that's the point of killing these characters off, it's to remind you that no one is safe. So moving forward with the series, I will be more aware that they will kill people off for dramatic effect. One of my biggest gripes with Halo 3 though is that the Arbiter felt completely arbitrary in this game. See what I did there? He made no difference whatsoever and could have just as easily been Johnson or some other soldier. Considering how central he was in Halo 2, it felt like he was only included here because he had to be. Like they'd written such an important character that they had to include him somehow, so now he just tags along and hangs around all the main characters who have actual goals to achieve. Which is kind of like how I feel when I meet up with friends, except I was never that important in the first place. Which, at long last, concludes what I assume was supposed to have been the Halo trilogy and the end of the story. As an end to that story arc, I think it did a pretty good job. There were no major plot threads left unanswered that I could think of, other than that one line Guilty Spark says in the first game, which I assume meant some sort of time travel was going to pop up, but that's clearly been forgotten about at this point. I still think the story could have done more though. Gravemind was shockingly absent, Truth shows up in one cutscene where he then dies, rather than feeling like an ongoing presence, and again, the Arbiter is frankly wasted here. That said, I had so much fun with this game that I was quite annoyed when I found out that Chapter 11, as listed on the Master Chief Collection screen, is just the epilogue cutscene. I thought I had a whole additional level to play through. This game is noticeably shorter than the last two though, as I blasted through this in literally a day. But that was the style of the time. FPS games were shifting to a multiplayer focus, which takes development time away from single player campaigns, and as such they started getting shorter and shorter until people stopped including them altogether, before realising the error of their ways and then releasing Titanfall 2. Again, Master Chief is still an odd duck to me. So I understand that I haven't had the 20 odd years of hype or whatever surrounding this character, but I don't get the excitement that he creates in people. He's not a real character, he's a blank slate that occasionally talks. I had expected so much more from him after what I'd seen from people over the years, so I guess I was just taken aback by how little of a character he actually is. Like I said before, it's as if they couldn't decide between a voiced character or a silent protagonist, so I tried to find some sort of middle ground. I have really enjoyed my time so far with the Halo series, and while I'm sure many people will tell me that it's all downhill from here, I've heard plenty of positive opinions about Halo Reach at the very least, and frankly I'm just looking forward to spending more time exploring this universe. While I would have appreciated a bit of a deeper story in Halo 3, I do have to remind myself that Halo 1 was pretty light on narrative too, and in fact the only reason the more restricted story stands out here is because of how hard they went in on it on Halo 2. Halo 3 was the sequel to Combat Evolved that I had hoped Halo 2 would have been. It built on the bits I loved about the original game, stripped back some of the things I didn't like so much, and added that cinematic approach taken from the second game. There were several gameplay set pieces which were clearly an homage to the original release, in a way bringing the trilogy to an end in the same way that it began, even literally doing so with Master Chief himself. And as such, Halo 3 goes here. Top of the list, get in. Which leaves me looking forward to Halo 3 ODST. I mean, my next video will be on God of War Chains of Olympus as part of my Greek God of War ranking series, and then it will be ODST. It's the first game that isn't a numbered sequel, but was still developed by Bungie, so I'm very curious as to what sort of experience that's going to be. Please do subscribe to make sure you don't miss that one, and thank you for watching all the way to the end. Pour yourself a drink, you've earned it. Once again, thank you to my supporters over on Patreon for making this video possible. I am a one-man operation and these videos take fucking ages to put together, so I am incredibly grateful for any and all support, even if it's just a like or a friendly comment. Even a negative comment, it's all interaction, and it all helps the channel, and I cannot thank you enough for that help and support. Patrons also get access to exclusive benefits like ad-free videos and early access, so go check that out if that sort of thing tickles your fancy. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.